Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of the Better Events podcast. In today's episode, we are talking all about this or that. What should you invest your time in as an event professional? So, we share our opinions about things we think are a good use of your time. So, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Better Events Podcast. I'm Logan Clements, one of your co-hosts, and I'm joined by fellow co-host Mary Davidson. And in this week is kind of like a part 2 to last week's discussion about time management, where we're going to dive even more into kind of a overall strategy side of things of how to invest your time in the classic little this or that framework. But before we jump into that, Mary, our conversation starter this week is, what is your favorite body of water that you enjoy? We're talking lakes, beach, swimming pool.
Hot tubs.
Hot tubs, that would also count. What's your favorite?
Hot tubs, I would say that, or I like a beach. I like a sunny beach, not like a Seattle PNW beach, like a sunny beach. So, one of the two. Both are relaxing to me, so that's why. What about you?
It's a good question. I think I grew up going to swimming pools all the time, so I could be in a swimming pool all day. But I will say if I had the option of access to a pool or a beach, I would pick a beach. And I do think we get sun here in Seattle, but I think your point maybe is that the water is too cold. And we don't get sun all the time, but I do think I grew up going to the Jersey Shore, and so I have very fond nostalgia for the Jersey Shore, not the TV show, but the actual beach at the Jersey Shore. And it is still chilly, but it does warm up over the summer. Like if you go in July and August, you're able to get in, and I could be in the ocean all day.
Yeah, I remember I was in like Tampa, Florida, I think, and I went to some beach that was amazing because like the sand is not the sand that we have in the PNW. And I like took a nap on the beach and it felt like soft and amazing and warm, and I was like, I could live here. I could literally live on the beach.
We do have
So,
rocks on the beach here, I guess.
wow,
Yeah, you're right. Comfortable sand and water you can actually get in.
exactly. It's not too much to ask. But we love conversation starters and fun questions like that. And you can hear more fun things like that if you join our Better Events community, which we'll put information about in the show notes if you haven't heard about us talk about it already. But we would love to see you there. We have lots of fun conversations that you can be a part of and listen to. So definitely check it out. And then we are going to transition into our topic for today, which, as Logan mentioned, we are talking about investing your time in this, not that. And this will be for your event career. So whether you own your business or you work within a company, whatever your situation is, this will be applicable to you. And we know that so many things take our time. Last episode, we talked about all the time management efforts that we can make. And there are so many things demanding our time. I am personally really excited about this topic because recently my therapist helped me identify that time is like my strongest value. Like how I'm just so incredibly protective on who I like let take my time. I'm really like against a lot of meetings and things like that. Logan, maybe you've experienced this with me. I feel like for some reason I'm like obsessed with who gets my time. And it's just something that's inside of me. I can't help it. It's just really important to me. So all of that to say that's my spiel. Time's important. It's probably important to you too. But today we're going to help you figure out where you should invest your time in your career. Logan, is there anything you want to add to that before we jump right in?
I mean, I think it's just the acknowledgement that we all get 24 hours in the day. So it is one that, last week we talked about kind of how we manage our time. And this is a little bit more of an overarching tools, strategy behind what you're putting your time to. And I think this is one where, Mary, you're probably, like you said, you're very protective of your time. So you're definitely a little more, I think, an expert in this topic than I am. I think I have more things that I'm aspirational for, because we've both talked about being people pleasers. And I think with my time, I am still very people pleasing in what I invest my time in. So uh, I'll be sharing experience, but also some aspirational things.
As we all are. It's a hard topic, so we'll learn together today. But Logan, if you can kick us off, um, if you could kind of like divide out in percentages, I'm putting you on the spot, like how much time you spend either working events, networking like slash professional development, and then working on your business. So three categories. If you could percentage it out, what would you say?
Oof. This right now, screenshot of what I'm doing here in June of 2024, I would say I'm probably 75% working on events and maybe then 10% working on my business, 10% professional development networking, and then I'd say a 5% kind of other, but I'm very executing events heavy right now.
You're like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
like going ticking through my day kind of in my head. I'm like, yeah, I'm very, very I'd even say that, and that 5% could flex to 8 to the events too. So I'm like 75,
Uh-huh.
80% events right now.
Yeah, and our schedules, once again, this is a capture of June, are a little different right now. So typically it is different right now. I would say maybe 60% working events, like 30% networking. I'm like trying to go to everything while I can. You know what? That's not true. I'm gonna say I'll say 20% networking because really when I'm networking, what I'm doing is trying to get more business. So that brings me to 20 more percent of working on the business. So there's some overlap there for sure. But yeah, right now I'm in a stage of almost equally splitting my time amongst growth because this is a slower season for us. But as we both identified, yeah, this changes depending on how busy you are. Last episode, we talked about busy seasons versus slow seasons. And this is an example of that for each of us. Um, and then one activity that we have done that I thought might be interesting to talk about here, just so you all can use it as like a tip, is to sit down with yourself or do this in a group. And there's a activity called What's on Your Plate. And we even heard somebody who's going to be doing this at like an upcoming like conference, some type of meeting that they're having where you just sit down and you literally like have a plate and you percentage out how you spend your time. So what we did, you can do, but more in detail. So maybe you do spend like 5% here and like 7% here, and it's your whole life. So it's not just work, it's volunteering, it's family, it's hobbies, whatever it is that you spend your time on. And then once you have that visualization, for me, it's really helpful to see what you're spending your time on and if you want to keep investing time in what you are. When I did this activity, I actually saw very clearly that there was something that I just didn't have time for that was taking up a lot of time, and it was something that was causing me pretty intense stress for months. And I did cut it out after this activity, and I can say right now that I am so much happier. So that's something that was in my personal life, but still it impacts all the components of your life. So that's one example of an activity that you can do to kind of figure out what you want to invest your time in.
I love it. So I guess quick question, if we're going to talk about what we want to spend, so spend our time on this. Mary, where do you think event pros should be investing their time when it comes to their event career or business?
So, like, for a quick answer, because we're going to answer this more as we keep talking, but I would say event professionals should invest their time in executing events and a little maybe tidbit of time in building partners, community, like getting to know other people, because you cannot do this alone forever. You will need people in your corner. So don't forget to spend time on that. Logan, what would you say?
I agree. I think my quick answer would be on the business development and nurturing those relationships as you're doing the executing, so that you're not forgetting about that until you're, not working on a project or really slow season. You got to be consistent with that outreach.
So, what was like a time where you felt like you truly were glad that you spent time on something, like a specific either, I think, networking event or professional development activity? Let's go there because sometimes those are harder. Sometimes they're really not beneficial and they can get a bad rap. So, do you have an example of one where you're like, yes, this was a good investment to spend my time on?
Yeah, this won't be an event. This is more of a practice that I've implemented, and that's in my paper planner. I have a little section that I handwrite in every week that's people to reach out to. And my goal, and I don't know where I picked this up, but I picked it up from a book or something I read, was again to say you need to constantly have business development top of mind. And so I always write 3 people, minimum 2, but usually try to do 3 people that I will reach out to. And it can be anything from like a mentor I want to send a text to a client that is 6 months out from their event and we think we might want to work together. And that's really fun because I can also kind of plan out, so I can look ahead a couple months and write in, Mary, you and I talked and you said, hey, you're going to slow down in August. I'll write in August. I'll already jump ahead in my planner and write in Mary Davidson. So I reach out to you. And that has been really helpful for me, both like from a networking colleague perspective as well as a business perspective. And it has made it so I'm making space physically for it on my planner every single week. So that's been really helpful for me. I've seen actual returns on that. But how about you? Do you have a specific networking event or activity that you are glad you spend time on?
I would say that this is a classic example of like, I think you get out what you put in. So I've gone to many a networking event or participated in a webinar, to learn something new where I wasn't fully participative or I was late or, something where I just feel like I didn't get a lot out of it, but I don't feel like it was necessarily because of like the content. I think it was because of me. I wasn't ready to like get something out of it. So if we're talking about where to invest your time and even time management from the previous episode, I think if you're going to go to something like a networking event or professional development activity, make it worth your time. And I think that you are in control of that. So like if I leave something like that and I haven't like met someone new, to me that's like a miss. And that's hard because locally we see people that we know and it's really fun to hang out with your friends and your colleagues and people but this happened to me recently where I left thinking like, wow, I spent so much time like cuz most networking events are in Seattle too and I live an hour out of Seattle, and so I'm like I spend my time going like driving in and out, and then I didn't even like make any new connections. So I guess a specific example lately was of me not meeting someone new. So it wasn't a positive example of this, but it was a good reminder that I do think we have some control over making it worth our time.
And just thinking about efficiency here, what are some technology and tools that help you be efficient with your time?
Last episode, we talked about time tracking and things like that was helpful. Um, I would also say I schedule out drive times in my calendar. So this could be, transportation times depending on how you get from place to place. But I found that that's really helpful because if you look at something as a whole and you have to go there in person, it always takes longer. And so you're dedicating, not just an hour for an activity, but like maybe 2 hours total with transportation and drive times. So that's something that's helpful for me to like, if you're figuring out how much time to invest in something, you need to consider like all in all, how much time is it taking you to prepare for it, to get there, all of that. Logan, what would you add?
From like a learning perspective, I found if anyone sends me like a Zoom recording or something that I need to listen to, and this is more in the category of more like professional development or education, I found if they allow you to download the file, a hack I've done for a couple things is I then download it and I then transfer it as a file to my phone and I listen to it like a podcast. Podcasts are great for me on like just being on the road. Mary, you talk about driving. I don't drive really, but I have a lot of time if I'm on a bus or on a plane. I find I will often turn to a podcast versus remember that random recording email that came came into my inbox. And so that's been a fun workaround for me. And so that can also be if you're a company or an organization that does have a lot of meetings and you take recordings and you need to catch up on them, like meeting yourself where you're at. So whether that if you're a visual learner watching it on YouTube or watching the video, or for me, again, I like to kind of do it on the go. So downloading it to your phone.
That's a great tip because I have this folder on my email that's just like about content to watch that I've never gotten to from free webinars. So I love that. Super helpful. Are there any parts of the event planning process that you've found, Logan, can be like delegated or outsourced? Because that also shifts how you spend your time.
This is a goal of mine, Mary, this year to try to do some more delegating in everything that I do. Cause I think for me, I've learned that I don't like busy work. work. And so there were some things that used to be in my workbook and things that I would plan for that I felt like maybe was a busy work kind of activity. Um, and so I probably actually did the inverse where I have less of my team on calls and it's more just me and I'm bringing them in for day of execution. So it's not necessarily answering your question about delegating or outsourcing. Something I've always delegated, though, I guess I should say, is my taxes with an accountant. That is something that from the jump, I was pretty adamant that was the first thing I wanted to invest my money in. And it has been something super effective. They tell me my quarterly taxes. She also does my Department of Revenue taxes. Like that's just a whole part of my business that I don't have to worry about. I don't sweat. I do my QuickBooks still, but she's checking my work. That's just been really, really helpful. And so I aspire to have that with some other events. I've seen some of our colleagues who've gotten brought in, virtual assistants and things to help them with booking travel and some of those other things that I'm realizing, like me personally, I don't have to be the one that does that. I could make the parameters and share that with, somebody else to help me with. But that is one that I would say that I'm working on delegating. How about you, Mary? You have a team now. So what have you found that can be delegated or outsourced effectively?
Yeah, we're talking about like where you can invest your time. And so I would say like you probably need to keep pieces that are relationship based, that are about building your career, building your business. The professional development is yours, like there's certain things that just have to stay under you. Maybe you specialize in something like Logan, you're really good at show calling, for example. So you probably need to keep that piece if you have control over that. But then think about everything else. Like you could outsource or delegate like vendor management or like project management, even. That one's kind of tougher sometimes, but you could. Um, or think through other parts of the process, like any type of like tracking or vendor venue related work. That's lots of stuff that other people can do, and they can do it usually with very little training as well. But I think the caveat to this is if you are choosing to invest your time in certain things and delegating others, then my question back to you would be like, well, then what are you going to be doing with your extra time? And so I think that's the key is like when you choose to do this, you need to then, as a result, invest your time in something else that is going to be worthwhile. That might not be work. It could be self-care, like, but it could also be like, I don't know, growing your career in some way. So that's kind of the caveat I would mention with that.
Yeah, I think hearing your answer, I've also, for what I've done, how I've evolved as an event professional has also been just slightly niching down more in what I'm doing. I had that come up at an event that I was talking to someone. They're like, well, do you do overall event management? I was like, I can. I've definitely done it. But actually, if you look at what I've been working on the last year, almost everything has been more on that production side of things. And with a virtual event, I would say sometimes the entire thing is production, but it's not as full and complete like talking about venue management. I'm like, I haven't had to do that in a really long time and I'm not mad about it. Like I've just gotten a little more selective with what I'm saying yes to, mainly because I found the difference if we're doing this or that, that it's less of me just saying, oh, I want the client, I want more because that means I get to do more. And it goes, I can do it, but it's not my favorite. And I've just kind of niched more and more into drilling into my favorite role, maybe not my favorite type of event, but my favorite role at events and figuring out how that fits in.
Now we're shifting to what you should not spend your time on. So don't spend your time on these things. This is our opinion. We'll see if you agree with us. But Logan, what do you think? Quick answer. What do you think event professionals should not be investing their time in?
Controversial, but I will say very fancy social media posts. I think
Yes.
another goal, Mary saying yes. I think done is better than perfect, and just getting it out there, even with a very simple caption and some simple hashtags is good. Like sometimes just good is good enough. So don't invest in trying to do this huge fancy social media plug. I just think it doesn't make sense. And then I think kind of controversial to what you were saying earlier, Mary, is I also don't know if going to tons and tons of networking events is a good use of your time. I think less is more, and you have your point about being intentional about which ones you're going to and setting a goal going into it. will help you find that time back. But just going to every event under the sun, you're going to probably just make yourself tired, and then you're not actually executing any events anyway.
100%.
So those are two. What we can keep going back and forth, but what do you have,
Well,
Mary?
I totally agree with actually everything you said, like even the second one too, because you could fill your entire day going to networking events or different like event conferences, or sorry, not your whole day, your whole year with all of those things and never actually do events. Like we have so many events within the event industry that you can attend. And so I just like 100,000,000% agree with what you said. One thing I had to do this week was I got all these emails, about all these activities going on and these invites to open houses and things like that, where I'm like grateful to be invited. But also I like wrote them all down and I'm like, okay, this is like one every week for the next 5 weeks. Like which one or ones do I want to go to and why? And I ended up ruling out a couple of them because I was like, I just talked to this person, so it's not like as crucial for me to go to that one, but then this person would be a new contact, so I should probably go to that one. So I would say just like what you said, don't spend too much time on all the networking stuff, make it impactful. And also to go further into what I said, if you do hosted by your experiences and things like that, next thing you know, you could go to so many. And that is where I've had to cut back lately and say, like, they're cool opportunities. And yes, I need to go sometimes, but also I'm trying not to do those more than twice a year because it is too much. It is just too much. And so if you're like a sourcer, yeah, maybe you need to go to those more often. But for me and what I do, had to cut it back. So don't be as so tempted, I guess. As an industry, we have like I said, a lot of fun things that happen. You don't have to do all the things.
Definitely. And I think some more will come up as we keep talking through these questions. But Mary, how do you protect your time with clients and event stakeholders and everything that goes into being an event professional?
I think I might refer back to our episode that we had with Carla, our guest on 158, is just setting boundaries. Like truly, it's a phrase that I think that's overused, but it's something that's so crucial. I think everybody has to do it. And so I would say, yeah, protecting my time with clients and event stakeholders has just been because of boundaries, clear scopes of work, not scope creep, all of those things. And I think that people respect it. I do. Or at least I think good people respect it. So that's what I would just reiterate. Oh,
Yeah, and
what
to
about you?
dovetail on that, I think having, if you're out of office, I took this from a friend who doesn't work in the event industry, but she lists her out of office dates in her email signature. And so it's just constantly something that is, referable for people. And I started doing that probably a year ago. But I've learned also vocalizing verbally and in writing in an actual email body, talking about my out of office from the jump, from even the proposal phase. Or if you're nervous and want to make sure you sell it, once you're on phase, to Mary's point, like a good client who understands boundaries and has healthy work practices is going to respect that. And I will say that's probably a lesson learned that Mary and I had because we worked a project together and we didn't cross reference that our out of office was going to overlap. And it became a thing we had to adjust to. So it's definitely one that even if you're not working with the end client, maybe just your team saying, hey, it's June. I'm just putting on your radar. In August, I'm going to be out of office for this week. And I've, since being verbal with it, have never had a client have an issue with it. It's helped get ahead of those conversations. And I'm not surprising anyone when I'm unreachable, truly out of office. And I say that I'm like, I am unreachable, not on the phone, not on text. I'm not checking email. So that is just something I feel like I hope that we get rid of working on vacation as an industry. And I think that's just a small bit that you can do is just normalizing it for everyone you work with.
Yeah, you'll be so much happier if you really just like cut that cord when you're on vacation. Like, yeah, couldn't agree more. Lots of hard lessons learned, I think, from both of us in that realm. So for sure, take our word for it. Is there, you mentioned the slogan. So is there a marketing approach or platform that you think event planners waste time on?
I mean, I think everybody for like Instagram, I feel like people think it has to be perfect and beautiful and curated. And then all of a sudden they realize they haven't posted in 6 months. It's not really a waste of time. I probably would have said that 2 years ago. I would have said LinkedIn might have been a waste of time, but I don't know if LinkedIn's cut down on some of the spam or maybe who I follow has changed where I do feel like I see relevant information on that platform, like of what people are up to. But I just find a lot of planners I talk to complain that they want to do more on social media, but they don't know where to start. And I'm like, I've been there. I've learned for myself now that I need to post about an event almost as soon as it wraps, or I will forget about it. And then all of a sudden I'll be 3 months out and be like, someone's like, I didn't know you did that conference. I'm like, how did you not know? And I look back and I'm like, oh, I never posted. So I'm just, done is better than perfect. Mary, how about you? Do you agree with that? Do you have a different platform?
I completely agree, and I don't know that I can add a platform. I was gonna say, like, newsletters, but people will come at me for that, and I know you love your newsletter, and I like your newsletter too, Logan, but me personally, like, I can only speak from my experience. I have never got business from, like, marketing efforts. Part of that is probably because I'm not consistent or great at it, but it's just not a place that I am convinced I should personally, for my services, spend my time. I get them more from meeting people. So don't come at me. Everybody's different. But yeah, I would just echo that. I don't wanna tell you not to spend your time on that, but I think that depending on what kind of events you do, some people are gonna have more, results than others in the marketing realm.
Yeah. I think my challenge to you would be, it's a long game with social media. You are
Yeah.
rarely going to get hired because of one post. But I have found real business from people subtly not even liking what I'm posting, but clearly they should have seen it. They've seen it because they're calling me to help them with Zoom, or they're calling with me to have them help them with their event production or their AV order that they're confused on. And the only way they would know that is because I've posted over time. So your point, Mary, of like consistency is important, but I would challenge you as an event pro, even if whether you're internal, external, independent, work full time for someone, post once a month. And it can be the simplest of like you with a headset on, you with your clipboard, you in your event office, and 2-3 sentences about what you're working on, because it just helps the visibility of folks seeing what you're doing. And it gives you some history if you're ever looking for a new job and you worked full time for somewhere. It gives somebody posts that they can go back and look on and like, this is a real person. They are interacting and, here on the platform.
It definitely does give you credibility, like, for sure. So there is absolute value there. Yeah.
But not like an hour a day or even multiple hours a week. And that's why, and I also don't waste time on, even in my head, controversial hot take. You don't need to change what you're posting across the different platforms. I just post the exact same thing on Instagram and Facebook. I now take, and maybe I just remove an emoji or I add a different sentence for what I put on LinkedIn, but I do almost the exact same thing on LinkedIn, because for me, done is better than perfect. I'd rather get it on all three platforms because I found the folks who follow me on each platform are a little different.
I think there's a whole, like, component here where, once again, this is why this is a good conversation. There's a lot you could spend your time in or not, but those are some helpful things for sure. And then, Logan, what aspects of event execution can usually take too much time if not managed properly?
Event content. What are we going to talk about? Who's going to be on the panel? What kind of presentation are we going to give? Those conversations, for me, from a producer perspective, can be such a time suck. They just, if you don't have the key people in the room, if you don't have the right people on that call, it's going to take another call to decide. It also will be if you had the not right, maybe it's the support staff was helping you with all the planning, and now all of a sudden the speaker gets on the call and they don't like any of the slides. You can waste so much time changing bullets, changing content. And like you, if you're the event manager or planner, you don't need to be privy to that rehearsal or that meeting. I mean, that's one too. Like I think about virtual events. It's like, I'm here for the tech questions. If you want to have a content rehearsal, we can have that. That can be separate. Or I do the tech at the start and then say any other tech questions, I'm going to hop off, or I release part of the tech team. Like that to me is one that just takes so much time. Revisions of slides and content like videos, all of that stuff can be such a time suck. And so I just urge, if it is not something that you're responsible for directly, do not waste your time on it. Have somebody else manage it and jump in, when it's in a little bit more of a finalized version.
I'm thinking of, like, so many things. I don't even know how to, like, narrow it down, but any type of, like, spreadsheet tracking, there are lots of things that is from. It could be the assets, it's the registration, it could be even, like, hotel room blocks, anything that requires, like, these massive registration forms and, like, consistent tracking already takes a lot of time. So if you avoided it or, just didn't stay up on it for whatever reason, this could really, really bite you in the butt. So you have to stay up on those things. But alternatively, like, there's a lot of day of materials that you can prep, like supplies lists and all of these things, that's where I'm like, I don't want to touch it twice. So I'm leaving it for event week. And so there's a fine line between figuring out what you're going to touch repeatedly and then what you don't want to touch any more than once, and then figuring out when you need to complete that task. So hopefully that's like kind of helpful. I know I'm being vague, but I would definitely say that you need to manage your time or you will spend all your time in spreadsheets.
Yes, like, the in our time management episode, we talk about events and time management go together like peanut butter and jelly. It really is. You can plan an event with 1,000 hours and you can probably do it with 100 hours. And depending on the people in the different roles, that 1,000 hours might not necessarily be more efficient. You can waste a lot of time. So hopefully you've learned a little bit of like these this or that's, but I think looking ahead to the future, Mary, if someone is new to the event industry, where would you recommend they start spending their time to get the most return on their investment?
I would say it's meeting people. Something I love is when folks who are new to the industry reach out to us and they want to just like meet and ask some questions. And we're trying to, build this community so also everyone can like help each other. But we are great, like happy to take time to do things like that occasionally. And so that there was a lot of initiative that I appreciate people reaching out because you're not going to learn things unless you either talk to people who've done it or you do it yourself a lot of the times. And so I really just appreciate like direct conversations with people. I think will be a really good use of your time if you're new to the industry. Do some market research, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, the dreaded kind of some people don't love being asked to pick your brain. So if you're able to, if that's what you need to get started, but you're realizing people aren't responding to you when you're new, maybe drill into a specific thing. I feel like I get frustrated sometimes with these when people say, oh, they want to, they just want to learn more about events. It's like, wow, that's so broad. I cannot even possibly tackle that in a 20-minute phone call. But if I'm really interested in your experience working in live sports, your experience show calling, what does production and event mean, like drilling in a little bit more of what your ask is from that person. And you can usually get that information off their LinkedIn or website. So I think just reiterate. And then I would emphasize this point's not just for new professionals, but also for seasoned event pros, because you never know what you're going to need. You don't know if you're going to need to transition jobs. You don't know if you're going to need another vendor. And I've also found you're not going to know if your clients dry up or a client doesn't come back and all of a sudden you're available. It's always easier to lean on contacts that are already existing and active versus trying to hit up people that you haven't talked to in 3 years. And it's only because you need something. So I'm always a big fan of like nurture those relationships before you need something if you're the person reaching out. And then same for like when I've done calls with people, I've actually hired or referred work to people that I've met in person or on virtual calls and felt like, yeah, I trust and like them. They seem to know what they're doing and they've gotten real business out of that.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, there are so many things that you could spend your time on. So, yeah, talk to people and we hope that's certainly helpful for you. And yeah, if you need connections, the least you could do is email us as well. We always do try to connect you even if we can't give our time all the time. We can try to connect you with somebody who can. So, we're all here for each other. There's so many things you can invest your time in, but hopefully we've shared some tips and tricks with you today. And that does bring us to the end of our episode. So, Logan, you have our bonus tip today.
Yes, this week's bonus tip is about retirement or investing. So, if you're contributing to a Roth IRA, a SEP IRA, which is self employed for us business owners like myself, or a 401k through a company, maybe, make sure your money is actually being invested. This sounds so simple, but when you actually contribute money to your account, it could be sitting in an investment account, but in cash. And this is something that like I love a set it and forget it method. I'm very low touch when it comes to these things. And I heard this advice on a money podcast and was like, let me go and look at mine. And funny enough, there are about 5 months of contributions just sitting in literal cash, which like the return on that is equal to it's just sitting in a savings account. So it was there, but I had to purposely invest it. So you can then set up like auto invest depending on the platform you're on. But just making sure that you're paying it forward to future you and your savings that you think are invested are actually invested.
I love it. Thank you so much, Logan, for the awesome bonus tip. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Better Events podcast. We will see you next week. But before we let you go, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. Check out our private community. Woo! We'd love to see you there. Email us at bettereventspod@gmail.com. And you can also connect with us directly on LinkedIn. And thank you so much, everybody. We will now see you next week.